The room was dim, quiet except for the faint hum of the studio lights. Ronald D. Moore, the creator of Outlander, sat across from the interviewer, his expression unreadable. It was 2026, more than a decade since the show first changed television, and the world was about to hear something it never expected. The host leaned forward. "Ronald, the fans say Outlander wouldn't exist without Sam Heughan. What made him so irreplaceable?" Ronald paused, exhaled slowly, and said the words that would send shockwaves through the fandom. "People think they know Sam Heughan, but they don't." The interviewer blinked, uncertain whether he'd heard correctly. But Ronald continued, voice steady, his eyes distant, the look of someone about to open a door that had stayed closed for far too long. "I've worked with hundreds of actors," he said. "Some are brilliant technicians, others bring emotion. But Sam became Jamie Fraser before the cameras ever rolled. And that's what frightened me most." The sentence hung heavy in the air. It was hard to imagine anyone frightening Ronald D. Moore, the man who resurrected Battlestar Galactica and built one of the most emotionally intense love stories ever put on screen. But as he spoke, there was no marketing polish, no Hollywood spin, just truth. "I remember his first audition," Ronald continued. "He walked into the room, and the energy changed. He didn't read the lines, he lived them. It wasn't acting, it was confession." He chuckled quietly, though there was no humor in it. "At one point, I actually asked the casting director if he'd gone through something traumatic recently. His performance was that raw. But when I looked closer, I realized, that's just Sam. He gives everything, even when he shouldn't." The interview footage later went viral, but in that moment, it was just two men talking. One revealing how close brilliance can sit beside pain. As Outlander grew from a cult romance into a global phenomenon, the world saw the perfect hero. The charming Scot, the noble warrior, the romantic dream. What it didn't see, Ronald explained, was the toll behind it. "During the early seasons," he said, "Sam carried the whole production on his shoulders. He worked 16-hour days, stayed in freezing rain for takes that could have been done in half the time, because he didn't believe in shortcuts. He used to tell me, 'Jamie deserves my best, even when I'm falling apart.' And I think he meant that literally." The interviewer frowned. "Falling apart?" Ronald nodded slowly. "There were nights he didn't sleep. We'd wrap at midnight, and I'd find him on set at dawn, rehearsing alone. Not because he had to, but because he couldn't stop. He once told me, 'If I don't stay in Jamie's head, I might lose the truth tomorrow.' That kind of dedication is rare, and dangerous." He hesitated before adding softly, "Sam almost walked away from the show, twice." The host leaned in, startled. "He nearly quit?" "Yes," Ronald said, "once during the 3rd season, and again after the 7th. Most people don't know that. The fame, the pressure, the constant scrutiny, it wore him down. He never said it outright, but I could see it. There was this look in his eyes sometimes, like he was carrying something too heavy, but he'd smile anyway because he didn't want to let anyone down." Ronald looked away from the camera then, as if reliving a memory he wasn't sure he wanted to share. "There was one scene, a particularly brutal one. When we finished, everyone applauded because it was so powerful. But Sam didn't move, he just stood there, shaking. I went to him and asked if he was all right, and he said, 'I don't know who I am right now.' That's when I realized he wasn't pretending anymore. He was living it." The host shifted uneasily in his chair. The tone of the interview had changed. No longer a conversation about a beloved TV show, but an unmasking of the fragile reality beneath it. Ronald sighed. "You see, people think fame is easy. They think success heals everything. But for Sam, it was the opposite. Every award, every headline, it only made him retreat further. I used to tell him, 'You don't have to be Jamie all the time,' but I'm not sure he believed me." There was a pause, the kind that felt like the air had gone out of the room. Then Ronald looked directly at the camera, his voice barely above a whisper. "He gave everything he had to that role, and I'm not sure the world ever realized the cost." The interviewer stayed silent, sensing there was more. Finally, Ronald said it, the line that would dominate every entertainment outlet the next day. "There's one thing the public never knew, something Sam kept hidden all these years. And maybe it's time people finally hear it." The lights flickered slightly as he leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes shadowed but intense. Sam Heughan didn't just play love and pain, he lived them. Every heartbreak on screen was borrowed from somewhere real. And that's the truth most people aren't ready to face. He stopped there, his voice trailing off into silence. The interviewer didn't dare interrupt. Cameras zoomed in, capturing Ronald's expression, part pride, part sorrow, as if he'd just unburdened something he'd carried for years. Somewhere in the control booth, a producer whispered, "Keep rolling." Because whatever came next, whatever truth Ronald D. Moore was about to reveal, the world would never look at Sam Heughan the same way again. For days after the interview aired, the world could talk about nothing else. Headlines screamed across every entertainment site. Ronald D. Moore breaks silence on Sam Heughan's hidden struggle. Clips of his words, "He gave everything he had, and I'm not sure the world ever realized the cost," went viral. The fandom was in shock. What had Sam been hiding? What truth had Moore finally decided to expose after all these years? Within hours, journalists were digging for context. Some insiders dismissed the drama, claiming Ronald's comments were taken out of proportion. Others hinted that the truth was more emotional than scandalous. "It's not about wrongdoing," one crew member said quietly. "It's about what it means to give your whole heart to something, and how lonely that can make you." But nothing could stop the speculation. A few days later, the network released the full uncut interview. The footage ran longer than what fans had seen on television. In that missing portion, Ronald leaned closer to the camera and said softly, "The truth is, Sam's not just a great actor. He's a man who's carried other people's pain so they wouldn't have to." He paused, then continued, "During the later seasons, I saw it start to break him. The emotional weight of Jamie Fraser's life, the trauma, the heartbreak, it started bleeding into his own." According to Ronald, there were times when Sam would finish filming a deeply emotional scene and stay on set long after everyone else had gone home. "He'd just sit there," Ronald said, "alone in the dark. I once asked him what he was thinking about, and he said, 'Trying to remember which part of this is me.'" The revelation stunned everyone. The image of Sam, the confident, smiling, fan-beloved hero, suddenly looked different. Beneath the charm and professionalism was someone quietly fighting exhaustion and the blurred lines between art and reality. But the truth went deeper still. "There's something else people never knew," Ronald admitted. "There was a moment, around season 7, when Sam almost walked away for good. We were filming one of the heaviest storylines, and I could see he wasn't all there anymore. I took him aside and said, 'If this isn't making you happy, you can stop.' He looked at me and said, 'I can't. I owe it to them, to the fans, to Claire, to the story.'" Ronald shook his head, his voice cracking just slightly. He stayed, not because he had to. Because he couldn't bear to disappoint the people who believed in him. But it cost him. You could see it in his eyes. The host asked gently, "Do you think he regrets it?" Ronald hesitated. "No, but I think he's tired. He once told me, 'I don't know what comes after Outlander. Maybe peace, maybe love, maybe I'll finally find what Jamie never could.'" That line hit the fandom like lightning. Maybe love. It reignited every rumor, every whisper about the mysterious romantic life of Sam Heughan. Was Ronald hinting that Sam had sacrificed real love for his career? That the man who spent a decade portraying one of television's greatest love stories had, in reality, lost his own? One columnist wrote, "Perhaps the truth Ronald Moore exposed wasn't scandal, it was sacrifice. The tragedy of an actor who gave everything to love on screen and found himself too empty to find it off." Meanwhile, Sam himself remained silent. No statement, no interview, no denial. But then, a week after the uproar, he posted a photo on Instagram. A shot of the Scottish Highlands at sunset, the caption reading only, "Every role ends. The heart doesn't." The internet erupted again. Fans debated what he meant. Some said it was his way of acknowledging Ronald's words. Others believed it was his quiet reassurance that he was at peace. But those who knew Sam best understood that message perfectly. It wasn't bitterness. It was acceptance. A few days later, Ronald was stopped outside a New York studio. A reporter called out, "Ronald, are you worried you said too much about Sam?" He smiled faintly and replied, "No. The truth deserves to be known. People see the hero, the smile, the perfect man. I just wanted them to know the human underneath." When asked if Sam was angry, Ronald shook his head. "He called me after it aired," he said. "He just laughed and said, 'You always did talk too much, old man.' Then he thanked me. He said, 'Maybe it's time people see me for who I really am.'" That phone call ended the speculation more effectively than any statement ever could. Weeks later, Sam appeared at an awards gala in Edinburgh. He looked calm, confident, and, if you looked closely, relieved. When asked on the red carpet about Ronald's interview, he smiled and said, "Ron's been like family. Sometimes family says things we're not ready to share ourselves. But he told the truth. All I ever wanted was to make something honest." He paused, glancing at the crowd of fans behind the barricades, their phones raised, faces glowing. "And I think we did." That night, as he accepted a Lifetime Achievement Award, he ended his speech with a quiet line that summed up everything Ronald had tried to explain. "The world saw Jamie Fraser. But I hope, somewhere along the way, they also saw Sam." And maybe that was the hidden truth all along, not scandal, not shame, but the reminder that behind every legend is a human being, still learning how to be himself after living someone else's story for so long.